So a while back, I got asked to present at a conference, and the underlying theme of the conference was uh, disruptors. And another aspect of it was disruptors and activists. And my particular realm was to be a disruptor in the creative industries, the creative realms. I was considered a creative disruptor, of which I wouldn't have given myself that label, but obviously I must be giving off disruptor energy. But when I looked into it a little bit more, I looked at some of the other people that were presenting at this conference or had been invited to present at this conference. I ended up not presenting at it for perhaps the reasons that you will discover. Is that I was looking through at the people that were disruptors, supposedly fellow disruptors, and it took me quite some time to go through their material, and I was kind of wondering, you know, what are they disrupting? And it came to my attention that sort of there's a kind of movement of people that want to be considered disruptors, but they're not really willing to disturb anything. And I felt that this was really a kind of a situation that we've fallen into in our uh, immersion in the corporatized world, the corporatized, mannequined, manufactured world of social media and corporatization. And I feel that this is something that we need to address as creatives. If we're running creative, we want to bring creative businesses to life. We want to bring ideas to life. We want to have a vision for something that we would love to create in the world. Now, this concept of disruption is something that I feel has been taken over and hijacked. And what we now call disruption is actually something completely different. So, in a sense, you could say like rebellion has come to the point where rebellion has metrics, creativity has analytics, authenticity has statistics, engagement statistics, and stuff like that. And, kind of what we call disruption has now got what you might call branded templates. And a lot of the so-called disruptors that I was looking at were people that were, of course, highly creative in their own particular sphere, but the label of that they'd labeled themselves disruptors and also activists, et cetera, et cetera. It seemed to boil down to some provocative comments or some form of manifesto that declared something or other, but there seemed to be no real sense of disruption. Now, disruption, as I understand it, and as I've done my best in over the years to perhaps delve into, disruption is something that is vitally alive. In fact, disruption is so unquantifiable and so beyond analytical. Disruption is something that is a vital force. Disruption is something that's unpredictable. It's a wild animal. And you see, the systems, these systems, the system, absolutely loathes disruption because it wants to sell us things. It wants to control us through our money, our choices. It wants to sell us crap that we don't need. And you can't do that through disruption. And in a sense, perhaps what's interesting, for example, is my daughter who's 15 and her friends, they're not really listening to contemporary music and they're listening to stuff from the 60s, 70s. Somehow the 80s got banded out. Maybe the 80s were a kind of very early prototype for the kind of conformity that we see imposed upon us now. And then the 90s were perhaps the last little uh, gasp of freedom that we went for in terms of our ability to put our creative gifts to work in a way that genuinely brought something new to life. Now, the thing with being a disruptor is that it takes you on a journey. Disruption is uncomfortable, it's unpredictable. It can be dark, it can be vast. It takes you into the areas that you didn't even know that you didn't know. It takes you on a journey. It calls upon you to become someone that you didn't even believe you could possibly be. It touches and moves something internally. So true, we could say that the moment corporates started advertising using visionary and disruption, it was kind of like the death rattle of what disruption really is. And in a way, we've been lulled, we've been moved into this way of thinking about things where everything is quantifiable, measurable, analyzed. And it's a bit like health metrics now. Our health, we're wearing stuff, I don't wear them, but these watches that tell us what our blood pressure is every second, what our goddamn heart rate is, and when we're going to fricking die or whatever. So we've become subject to this world where nothing is let off the lead. And as creatives, we are naturally augmented towards exploring the concept of disruption. We are naturally moved towards that because creativity, by its very nature, is something that cannot be predicted. It cannot be quantified. It cannot be explained. It cannot be even languaged accurately. It's something that opens us up to life in a fundamentally different way. Disruption is aliveness, it's vitalness, it's frightening, it's blinding, it's dazzling, it's exhilarating. So how do we get back to this? How do we understand ourselves and come back out of this corporate orchestrated way of understanding our creativity? Because you see, these systems, they absolutely loathe disruption. They can't bear disruption because disruption doesn't allow them a voice in what's going on. It doesn't allow them to get their little grubby hands on the thing, the very essence, the quintessence of something that is so alive and so different and so unrecognizable. You see, and when as creatives we are committed to creativity, to the process of creativity, it calls upon us to be a disruptive energy within ourselves. It disrupts our comfort. It disrupts the path that we thought we were on. It disrupts the personality that we thought we were. We cannot sit comfortable with things that no longer serve this energy, serve our spirit, our soul. It's a spiritual, it's a soul process. And it doesn't fit into these things that we're trying to fit it into. It won't conform. But you see, in that process, there arises possibilities that have real traction in the world, have real opportunity to help us grow and evolve and expand and touch the things that these corporate systems absolutely don't want us to touch, the ecstatic, the rapturous. So you can't corporatize those things. You can't bring those to a spreadsheet. Now, this doesn't mean that they don't, they're not monetizable in that you can't run a successful business that is catalyzed by disruption. But the actual process, the act, it's not even a process, the energy of disruption is not something that can be corralled, that's something that can be understood. Like the spiritual journey cannot be understood. And when we are committed through our creativity, through our art, through our vision, through our imagination, to disrupt, to be willing to disrupt, to be willing to put ourselves in a position where we may be unpopular, we may be misunderstood, we may be completely not understood. So things that emerge from disruption can be unrecognizable, they can be alien. They don't even conform to anything that we currently know. And there is the exhilaration. It's an exhilaration that has you right on the edge of your seat. It doesn't want you to go into the realm of what you already know. Whereas the system, the social media system, the search engine system, the system of digitization, of control, of AI, and all of these different things, that they are founded on what is already known. They are harvested from what is already known, and they feed back to us a theatrical version of that, a sanitized version of that. And that's what we've been given, a sanitized version of disruption. Because true disruption is something that is really just not tolerated in these systems. So when you come to create something, tap into that energy. The disruptor energy is a beautiful energy. There's intense beauty in it. And that beauty has a visceral quality. So when people come to me to ask, run a creative business idea past me or something like that, the first place that I ask them to work on, the first disruption, should they wish to be in that realm, is on themselves. To be willing to open themselves up bodily, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, to the unpredictable, to the unmechanized, to something that lights them up, what I call the vital flame. This is the essence of disruption. And nature disrupts things all the time. And the beauty that comes out of those disruptions is staggering. And what we've done is that we've got everybody playing the same game and within the same box. But you see, within that box are endless options. I just really want you to get what I'm saying here. So we're placed in this box. Within this box, there are endless options. And options coming and going all the time, options springing up all the time, more and more options, but no choices. Because no matter how many options that we're presented with, we're always in the box. So disruption is when you shatter the box. And it's frightening because you don't know what lies on the outside of that box because you might have always been in that box. But it's a journey worth going on. It's a journey of discovery of who you are. It answers questions. So creating a business answers questions that are fundamentally spiritual in nature. You get to discover something deep about yourself if you really enter into this process. And then there comes a time when you want to make money out of it. You want to have a business that's profitable. Of course you do. But that's not the disruption. And it's understanding what language to use when appropriate. Now, the language of disruption doesn't work in those systems. For example, if you want to talk about the spirit, you want to talk about, like the different realms of spirit and dreams and stuff like that. You might speak in Mayan or Sanskrit. If you want to talk about precision engineering, you might speak in German. But creativity, by its very nature, invites the energy of disruption. It invites it. It wants it, and yet it's frightened of it. And because it's frightened of it, there is this sense of exhilaration in a beautiful way, not in a terrifying way. It's when you know that you're on the threshold of something. That gives you something. You tap into something deeper. And that is what this system does not want you to do. So although it pretends to laud disruptors and activists, it doesn't actually do any of that. It doesn't really allow you to disrupt or to be an activist. Now, over the years, I've been privileged to meet both disruptors and activists. And when you meet someone who's a true activist, there's a palpable energy. There's something really channeled through that person or those people. And they're not willing to give that up for the sake of pleasing a system or pleasing others. And we shouldn't give that up for the sake of pleasing algorithms or trying to get likes or trying to make ourselves be perceived in certain ways. And I've fallen into the same trap as everybody else. But the thing is that what I've noticed is that when I do fall into that trap and I notice it, I really don't like who I become, who I'm called to become when participating in that. And it's really about understanding this and catching yourself in the process and waking up to what's going on. The fact that you are being corralled into a certain way of being, a certain way of expressing yourself, a certain way of understanding reality, a certain way of creating, of being a creative, of imagining. Even the imagination has been sanitized, has been quantified. So this is an opportunity. It's not about going back. It's about coming into the present moment and realizing the present moment is the only place you can really disrupt from. And it brings you home to yourself, the energy of coming home to yourself as a creative, as a sovereign being, not a corporate being, a sovereign, spiritual, miraculous being that has the capacity to explore through creativity, through imagination. This is what's open to us, and we must never forget that.